Mongolian woman condemned to starvation, 1913. In Mongolia, there was a prison called Urga, known for how cruel it was. Prisoners there were tortured in something called the Box of Death. The prison had a wooden fence around it, and inside were small houses that were always dark and very cold. In these houses, there were small wooden boxes like coffins. The boxes were only 4 feet long and 2 feet wide and only 1.5 feet tall. They were too small for anyone to sit up or lie down properly. These boxes were called coffin prisons. There was only a small hole in each box for some light and air. One American explorer said that prisoners would lose their eyesight and go mad from staying in them. Prisoners were fed once a day through the small hole. Their waste was only cleaned every 2 or 3 weeks. Many prisoners got very sick and died from diseases. Some prisoners had their necks chained to their hands, making it even harder for them to move. For some who did small crimes, they stayed in the boxes for a few weeks. But for those who committed serious crimes, they were kept in the boxes the whole time they were in prison. The boxes caused prisoners' bodies to shrink and become weak. Many prisoners froze to death because it was so cold, and some died even before they were supposed to be executed. Most of the prisoners in these boxes were Chinese, as the Chinese army had taken over parts of Mongolia at the time. Reports said that these prisoners could only see daylight for a few minutes when food was thrown to them. In one case, 2 men, Albert Kahn and Stefan Passe, took a photo of a woman locked in one of these boxes in the desert. She had a few bowls with water, but they were not filled again. She was left to die alone and in pain. The death coffins of Mongolia were outlawed in 1920, but Mongolian prisons are still known to be harsh today. These boxes were some of the worst torture methods ever used, and many prisoners would rather die than stay inside them. The Romanov execution room, 1918. Shortly after midnight on July 17, 1918, everything changed in Russia. Tsar Nicholas II and his family, the Romanovs, were killed by the revolutionaries who had taken over the country. The Romanovs had been rulers for over 300 years, starting when 16-year-old Mikhail Romanov became Tsar in 1613. In 1894, Nicholas II became Tsar. He was often unsure of himself and chose advisors who wouldn't challenge him, leading to many bad decisions. In 1904, Nicholas started a war with Japan because he wanted to expand Russia's land. Russia lost the war, and the people became angry. In 1905, workers marched to the palace to ask for better working conditions. Soldiers fired on the crowd, killing many and starting the failed revolution of 1905. Thousands died, but Nicholas stayed in power, supported by his wife Alexandra. Together they had 4 daughters: Olga, Tatiana, Maria, and Anastasia, and 1 son, Alexei. Alexei was sick with hemophilia, a condition that made him bleed a lot. Alexandra trusted a mystic named Rasputin because he could help Alexei feel better. Many people did not like Rasputin because they thought he was controlling the royal family. In 1915, Nicholas went to the front lines of World War I to lead the army. Alexandra was left in charge of the government, but she wasn't very good at it. People in the cities were starving and workers were treated badly. Alexandra let Rasputin make important decisions, which made the nobles even angrier. Meanwhile, Russia kept losing battles in the war. By late 1916, Russia had lost 1.7 million soldiers. The Russian people were tired and angry. In December 1916, some nobles killed Rasputin because they thought he was hurting Russia. On March 8, 1917, thousands of women in Petrograd, now St. Petersburg, marched in the streets to protest the government. Soon, tens of thousands joined them. By March 10th, there were 250,000 protesters, and the city shut down. Nicholas, still away with the army, ordered his generals to shoot the protesters. But on March 11th, the soldiers refused and turned against their commanders. Nicholas gave up the throne, and the 300-year Romanov rule was over. The royal family was first kept in a palace, then moved to Siberia. At first, they hoped they might be allowed to leave Russia. Nicholas asked his cousin, King George V of Britain, to take them in. At first, the British king said yes, but then he changed his mind because he didn't want to upset the British people. In August 1917, the Romanovs were moved to a town in Siberia called Tobolsk. In November, a new group called the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, took control of the government. The Bolsheviks didn't like the Romanovs at all. They kicked out most of their servants and made the family eat army food. In the spring of 1918, the Romanovs were moved again, this time to Yekaterinburg, to a house called the House of Special Purpose. On the night of July 17, 1918, they were woken up and told they were in danger from enemy troops. They were told to go to this basement for safety. The family and a few loyal servants went down to the basement. Some of them had jewels sewn into their clothes, which they had hidden since their captivity. Once everyone was in the room, the door was closed, and Yakov Yurovsky, the leader of the guards, told them they would be executed. The guards fired their guns, killing Nicholas and Alexei first. Some of the children survived at first, because the jewels in their clothes protected them. The guards then used bayonets and shot them in the head to finish them off. The bodies were buried in two separate hidden graves near a forest. The first grave wasn't found until 1979, and the second wasn't found until 2007. In the end, the family was reburied in St. Petersburg's Peter and Paul Cathedral. In July 2018, Yekaterinburg held a big event to mark the 100th anniversary of the Romanov family's deaths. Over 100,000 people came to honor them, showing that even after so many years, people still remember and mourn Russia's lost royal family. The last photo of Vladimir Lenin, 1923. This last photo shows Vladimir Lenin in a wheelchair. He had suffered 3 strokes in 2 years and was no longer able to talk or move much. His sister Anna and his doctor, A.M. Kozhevnikov, are beside him. Lenin had a very hard life. He led a revolution and had to fight in a civil war. He was also shot during an assassination attempt in 1918. Though he survived, he was badly hurt. This affected his health a lot. In March 1922, doctors told him to rest because he was very tired and had strong headaches. When he went back to Petrograd, now St. Petersburg, in May 1922, he had his first stroke, which made him unable to talk for weeks and made his right side weak. By June 1922, Lenin was a bit better, and in August he was able to work a little and gave 3 long speeches in November. But in December 1922, he had a second stroke that made his right side partly paralyzed, so he stopped working in politics. On March 10, 1923, Lenin had his third stroke, which took away his speech and stopped his work for good. Lenin was now mute and had to stay in bed, but he was still called the leader of the Communist Party until he died. Lenin died on January 21, 1924, at 6:50 p.m. in Moscow. He was 53 years old and died at his home in Gorky. After he died, about 900,000 people went to see his body in the Hall of Columns for 4 days. Some people said Lenin really died from syphilis he got from a woman in Paris, not from strokes. A scientist named Ivan Pavlov even wrote that Lenin had syphilis of the brain, but people in power did not let this be talked about. At the end of his life, Lenin was sad about how the government was run and worried it had too much power and was no longer serving the people. He did not trust Joseph Stalin, who was becoming very powerful. After he died, Lenin's body was embalmed and put in a tomb in Red Square, Moscow. During World War II, his body was moved to Siberia, but Lenin's body is still in Moscow today, and his suit is changed every 5 years. Barbara Mackle, 1968. Barbara Mackle was a young woman, 20 years old, studying at university. She was the daughter of a very rich man named Robert Mackle. Robert owned a big company called Deltona Corporation, one of the largest in America at that time. Because her family was so powerful and rich, Barbara became a target. In 1968, a flu hit Barbara's university in Atlanta, and she got very sick. Her mother, worried about her, traveled to Atlanta to take care of her. They decided it would be better for Barbara to get better at home, so they started a long trip back to Florida, where the family lived. Since it was a long drive, they stopped for the night in a small town called Decatur. They planned to rest and continue their journey the next day. But that night, something very scary happened. In the middle of the night, someone knocked on the door. Barbara's mom asked who it was. A man dressed as a police officer said he had some bad news. Barbara's mom opened the door, but this man was not a real police officer. He was a stranger pretending to be one. He was not alone. A woman was with him, but she was dressed like a man and looked so disguised that Barbara's mom did not realize she was a woman. The fake officer told Barbara's mom that Barbara's boyfriend had an accident. This was a lie to trick them. When Barbara's mom came close, the man knocked her out with drugs. She fell asleep and did not know what was happening. At gunpoint, the kidnappers took Barbara away. They told her right away that she was being kidnapped. They drove to a forest, a quiet place far from any people. Barbara saw that they had already dug a hole in the ground. This meant they had planned everything carefully. There was also a coffin ready. They made Barbara get inside the coffin. But the coffin had things for her: food, a blanket, and lanterns. It seemed they wanted to keep her alive, not to kill her. The kidnappers asked for a huge ransom of $500,000, which is about $3.5 million today. Before closing the coffin, they took a photo of Barbara. She held a paper that said, "Kidnapped." This must have been a terrifying moment for her. Then they closed the coffin and buried it underground. Barbara screamed and begged for help, but no one could hear her. She was trapped, buried alive. On the day Barbara was kidnapped, the kidnappers called her family. Barbara's father was very scared. The kidnappers told him they wanted the ransom, $500,000 in cash, and warned him not to call the police. They said he had to put the money in a folder and leave it in a secret place. They also told him to put a story about the kidnapping in the newspaper so people could help find Barbara. 2 days later, the kidnappers called again and gave the exact place where they wanted the money. A man who lived nearby noticed many strangers in a quiet place. It was unusual. He got suspicious and called the police. When the police arrived, they saw the kidnappers running away with the money. Barbara's father was worried because he knew the kidnappers did not want the police involved. But it wasn't him who called the police. To explain this, Barbara's father went on TV and said he didn't call the police himself. After seeing this on TV, the kidnappers believed him and told the family where Barbara was buried. They already had the money and were far away, so they had nothing to lose. The FBI sent more than 100 agents to dig where Barbara was hidden. The most amazing thing is that Barbara did not give up. She kept kicking the coffin and screaming. The rescuers heard her and were able to find her quickly. It took them just 12 minutes to dig her out. When Barbara came out, she was very weak and had lost about 10 kilos. The man kidnapper tried to escape on a boat, but was caught and sentenced to life in prison. However, he only stayed 10 years because of good behavior, which many people found unfair. The woman kidnapper was found 79 days later and sentenced to 7 years, but only served 4. In her book, Barbara explains how she stayed calm during those terrible days. She thought about her family and how she wanted to spend Christmas with them. These thoughts helped her stay strong and hopeful. It is hard to imagine how someone could stay calm while buried alive inside a coffin, but Barbara did. Execution of Lepa Radić, 1943. During World War II, the fighting in Eastern Europe was very cruel. The Nazis took over many countries. They ruled harshly and treated minorities very badly. Many people were sent away to concentration camps where they were killed. Some people fought back against the Nazis. These groups were called partisans. One young girl who joined the partisans was Lepa Radić. She was born on December 19, 1925, in a small village in what is today Bosnia and Herzegovina. Her family was poor, but believed in communist ideas. Lepa went to school and loved to read. She was very smart and got involved in politics when she was young. When the Nazis invaded Yugoslavia, they took over the area where Lepa lived. Many people in Yugoslavia didn't like the Nazis and started fighting them. Lepa's family joined the partisans in 1941. Lepa also joined them and helped in many ways. She started as a nurse, helping wounded fighters, but later she also fought in battles. In 1943, the Nazis launched a big attack to destroy the partisans. Lepa was helping to save women and children when she was caught by the Nazis. She was only 17 years old, but fought hard with her rifle until she ran out of bullets. She was captured and tortured by the Nazis to get information about the partisans. but she refused to tell them anything. On February 8, 1943, the Nazis took Lepa to be hanged. She stood bravely in front of the crowd. Before she died, she shouted, "Long live the partisans! Fight for your freedom and don't give up." The Nazis gave her one last chance to save herself if she told them the names of other partisans, but she refused. She said she was not a traitor and that others would continue the fight. Lepa was hanged when she was just 17 years old. Later, after the war, she was given the title People's Hero. Today, she is remembered as a symbol of courage and resistance against the Nazis. Even though she was young, she stood up to one of the most evil regimes in history and did not back down. The Shaved Woman of Chartres, 1944. On August 16, 1944, a young woman named Simone Tussaud was forced to walk through the streets while a crowd watched and mocked her. She was only 23 years old and had been accused of working with the Germans during World War II. People called this punishment the Ugly Carnival. During this time, many French people were angry with those who helped the Germans. Women who had relationships with German soldiers were often punished in a very cruel way. They would have their heads shaved and be paraded around town. Some were also beaten, painted with swastikas, or had things thrown at them. Simone Tussaud had worked as a translator for the Germans. She also had a baby with a German soldier. People said she helped the Germans by telling them about her neighbors, but Simone denied this. Still, she was punished very harshly. A member of the French resistance also branded her forehead with a hot iron. It was a very painful and shameful thing to do. She was forced to walk through the streets with her baby in her arms, while people shouted at her and threw things. Her father and mother were also forced to walk with her. They were all humiliated together. After this, Simone and her mother were sent to prison. They were later put on trial for helping the Germans. Simone was sentenced to 10 years of national degradation, which meant she lost many of her rights and was seen as a traitor. Even after the war, Simone struggled to live a normal life. People in France looked down on her, and she was very sad. She turned to drinking and died young at the age of 44. Young kamikaze pilot with puppy, 1945. The photo shows Corporal Yukio Araki, age 17 years old, holding a puppy with 4 other young men, ages 18 and 19, of the 72nd Shinbu Corps. An Asahi Shimbun cameraman took this photo on the day before the departure of the 72nd Shinbu Corps from Bansai Air Base for their kamikaze mission in Okinawa. Yukio Araki became the youngest kamikaze pilot during the Second World War when, at the age of 17, he took off from the Bansai Airfield, Kagoshima, in a Tachikawa Ki-54 twin-engine training aircraft on the 27th of May 1945. It has been speculated that his plane was one of 2 that struck the destroyer USS Brain, DD-630, killing 66 of its crew. However, the ship did not sink. Araki had been home in April 1945 and left letters for his family to be opened upon the news of his death. The letter to his parents noted, "Please find pleasure in your desire for my loyalty to the Emperor and devotion to parents. I have no regrets. I just go forward on my path." Ceremonies were carried out before kamikaze pilots departed on their final mission. The kamikaze shared ceremonial cups of sake or water known as Mizuno Sakazuki. Many Army officer kamikaze took their swords with them, while the Navy pilots, as a general rule, did not carry swords in their planes. The kamikaze, like all Japanese aviators flying over unfriendly territory, were issued, or purchased if they were officers, a Nambu pistol with which to end their lives if they risked being captured. Like all Army and Navy servicemen, the kamikaze wore their senninbari, a belt of 1,000 stitches given to them by their mothers. They also composed and read a death poem, a tradition stemming from the samurai, who did it before committing seppuku. Pilots carried prayers from their families and were given military decorations. The kamikaze were escorted by other pilots whose function was to protect the kamikaze to their destination and report on the results. Approximately 2,800 kamikaze attackers sank 34 Navy ships, damaged 368 others, killed 4,900 sailors, and wounded over 4,800. Despite radar detection and cueing, airborne interception, attrition, and massive anti-aircraft barrages, 14% of kamikazes survived to score a hit on a ship. Nearly 8.5% of all ships hit by kamikazes sank. The Great Smog of London, 1952. On December 5th, 1952, a thick fog covered London. Fog was normal in the city, so most people were not worried. But this fog was different. It stayed for 5 days and caused a lot of problems. London had bad air even before this. Many people burned coal to heat their homes, and factories also used coal. After World War II, people used cheap coal that made more smoke. All this made the air dirty. On that day in December, there was no wind. Warm air from chimneys and factories could not rise. Instead, it stayed close to the ground. The dirty air turned into a thick fog that covered the city. It was hard to see even a few steps ahead. Some people said it smelled like rotten eggs. The fog was yellow or green in places. People wore masks to go outside. Planes could not fly and buses stopped running. Only the underground, subway, was working. Roads were full of accidents. Many people stayed home. Schools and theaters closed. Even sports games were canceled because no one could see. Thieves took advantage of the fog. It was easy to steal when no one could see. Crime went up. People walked slowly, holding hands so they wouldn't get lost. Policemen with flashlights helped guide others. Many arrived at work with clothes covered in black soot. Some coughed for days. Doctors were very busy, but it was hard for them to get to patients. The fog finally went away after 5 days when the weather changed. Life slowly returned to normal. At first, no one knew how serious the fog had been. Later, doctors noticed that many elderly and sick people had died. Over 4,000 people lost their lives because of the smog. Some died during the fog. Others got sick and died later. This event made people think more about clean air. In 1956, a new law called the Clean Air Act was passed. It stopped people from burning dirty coal in cities and made factories clean up their smoke. London's air is better today, but pollution is still a problem. Iron Lung Ward, 1953. This photo was taken in 1952 at Rancho Los Amigos Hospital in California. It shows a room full of children in machines called iron lungs. These machines helped them breathe because they had polio, a terrible disease that could stop your muscles from working, including the ones that help you breathe. In the early 1950s, polio was spreading fast. Schools, swimming pools, and public places closed. Families stayed home, worried that they or their children might be next. There was no cure, and no one really understood where the disease came from or how to stop it. The most frightening part of polio was that it could cause paralysis. Some people couldn't walk again, others couldn't move their arms. The worst cases ended up in iron lungs, where they had to lie still for weeks, months, or even years just to survive. Taking care of polio patients was very hard. Equipment like the iron lung was expensive, but a group called the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis helped pay for it. This group also gave money to scientists to find a cure. In time, scientists like Enders, Weller, Salk, and Sabin made a vaccine. It was tested and then given to people across the country. The vaccine worked. Slowly, polio began to disappear. Today, most people never think about polio, thanks to that vaccine. But for the people in this photo, life would never be the same. This picture is a reminder of how scary polio was and how lucky we are to have a cure. Even emergency iron lungs were made during outbreaks. Some were built with things like wood, car parts, and glass. The Smiling Mad Bomber, 1957. On November 18, 1940, a homemade bomb was found on a windowsill of a building in New York City. The building belonged to the Consolidated Edison Company, a big electric company. The bomb was made from a piece of pipe and some small batteries. Luckily, it was found before it could explode. Next to the bomb was a wooden box with a note. The note said, "Con Edison Crooks, this is for you," and it was signed with the letters FP. Nobody knew then that this was just the start of a long and scary time for New York City. Over the next 16 years, the city would face many bomb threats and explosions because of this mad bomber. The police would work very hard to find out who was doing this, but it took many years. At first, the police thought the bomber was someone who had a grudge against the electric company. The company's records were all over the place, so it was very hard to find a suspect. After the first bomb, police looked at angry workers or others who might want to hurt the company, but they found no proof and stopped looking. Almost a year later, in September 1941, another bomb was found on a street near the electric company's offices. This bomb looked like the first one and was hidden inside a red sock. This bomb also did not explode. Police thought it might be from someone who used to work for the company and was angry after being fired. Then, during World War II, the bomber sent a note saying he would stop making bombs for the war's duration because of patriotic feelings. But he said he would return to cause trouble to get justice from the company after the war. After the war, bombs started appearing again. On March 29, 1951, a bomb exploded in Grand Central Station, one of the busiest places in New York. Luckily, no one was hurt. The bomb was made of pipe with nuts and bolts inside, similar to the bombs before. Police thought it was just a prank at first. Less than a month later, another bomb exploded in a phone booth in the New York Public Library. Police still did not connect these bombs to the old ones from the 1940s. More bombs kept appearing, sometimes in phone booths, sometimes in public places. Each time, no one was hurt, but people became more scared. In September 1951, a bomb exploded inside the Consolidated Edison building. The building was mostly empty, so no one was hurt again. Police still thought it might be a prank. But inside the police, they knew this was serious. They now believed there was a serial bomber in the city. The bomber also sent letters to newspapers, threatening more bombings if the electric company did not give him justice. Police looked at thousands of former employees to find someone angry enough to do this. In 1951, police arrested a man named Frederick Eberhardt, who used to work at the electric company, but was fired for stealing. His handwriting looked similar to the notes left by the bomber. But while he was being checked in a hospital, another bomb exploded somewhere else in the city. This showed he was not the bomber. More bombs exploded or were found in 1952 and 1953. Police were worried because the bomber was getting more skilled and dangerous. By 1956, the bomber had set off 33 bombs, with 22 actually exploding. Police looked everywhere and questioned many suspects, but they could not catch him. Some police thought the bomber timed the bombs to go off near a full moon. Finally, police tried something new. They asked a mental health expert, Dr. James Brussel, to study all the information and guess what kind of person the bomber might be. This was the first time police used something like offender profiling. Dr. Brussel said the bomber was probably a single man, between 40 and 50 years old, quiet, but not totally antisocial. He was good with tools, proud of his skills, angry, and didn't like being criticized. Despite this profile, the bomber was still free. Then on December 25, 1956, a bomb went off in a movie theater in Brooklyn. This made the public very worried, and police worked even harder. The case finally broke when a woman named Alice G. Kelly, who worked at the electric company, saw a file about an old worker named George Metesky. Metesky was 54 years old and had worked for the company for many years. In 1931, he was badly hurt in a work accident that damaged his lungs. After being paid sick leave for a while, the company let him go because his injury made it hard for him to work. Metesky tried to get money from the company as compensation, but he missed the deadline to file his claim. He became very angry and began planning revenge. He lived with his two sisters and made many bombs in secret. When police questioned Metesky, he admitted to planting 32 bombs over the years. In his sister's house, police found bomb-making materials and parts for a bigger bomb meant for a large building. Metesky said the letters signed FP stood for fair play. Metesky was arrested on January 22, 1957. After testing, doctors said he was paranoid and mentally ill. He was sent to a special hospital for criminals with mental illness. Even though his bombs caused fear and some injuries, he did not kill anyone. His story changed how police looked at crimes and helped start the idea of using profiles to catch criminals. April Fabb's bicycle, 1969. April Fabb was born on April 22, 1955, in Metton, Norfolk. She lived with her father, Ernest, her mother, Olive, and her older sister in 3 different council houses. April had another older sister who lived with her husband on Cromer Road in Rofton. On Tuesday, April 8, 1969, around 1:40 in the afternoon, April left her home to visit her sister in Raften. She had a pack of 10 cigarettes and a handkerchief in the small bag on her bicycle. She planned to give the cigarettes to her brother-in-law for his birthday. April wore a wine-colored wool skirt, a green jumper, long white socks, and wooden sandals. Soon after leaving, April met two friends near Harrison's farm on Cromer Road. After about 10 minutes, she said she was going on to her sister's house. Just after 2 p.m., a worker at Harrison's farm saw April riding her bicycle on Ruffman Road, going toward Ruffman. This was the last time anyone saw April, around 2:15 p.m. The same day, some workers found April's bicycle lying in a field on Metten to Ruffman Road, only a few hundred yards from where she was last seen. April had disappeared in less than 10 minutes. Later, a local man driving his mother home saw the bicycle in the field. He took it to the police station in Ruffman. The cigarettes, money, and handkerchief were still in the bag on the bicycle. That evening, April's mother found out April never got to her sister's house. By the next morning, a full search began. Police looked in an area 2 to 3 miles wide and asked many questions. They talked to April's family, friends, and neighbors. Even with all the searching and asking, April was never found. Many possible suspects were checked but later cleared. The case has never been solved. Over the years, little new information has been looked at closely. The case remains open, and it will stay open until April's fate is known. In 2010, forensic experts started using new technology called GIS mapping to try to find April. This project is expected to take a long time, and results might not come soon. The Bath School Disaster, 1927. It was the afternoon of May 18, 1927, in Bath, Chartres Township, Michigan. A terrible tragedy happened that day. Several buildings were destroyed, including a school. These explosions were not accidents, they were planned. A man named Andrew Philip Kehoe was behind the attack. Kehoe was born in 1872 in Michigan. He was very smart and liked working with electricity and machines. He studied at Michigan State College and later worked as an electrician. He married a woman named Ellen Nellie Price. In 1911, he had a serious head injury, and after that, he moved back to Michigan. Kehoe and Nellie bought a big farm in Bath Township in 1912. But Kehoe was not a kind man. He beat his animals and was known to be very frugal. In 1922, the township decided to build a new school, and landowners had to pay higher taxes. Kehoe hated this and joined the school board in 1924 to try to stop spending. But in 1926, he lost an election and felt humiliated. At home, things were bad. Nellie was very sick, and they were behind on paying for the farm. Kehoe became very angry and wanted revenge. He bought dynamite and other explosives and began to plan. In May 1927, Kehoe planted bombs at the school and his farm. On the morning of May 18th, he killed his wife and set fire to his farm. At 8:45 a.m., the farm exploded. People rushed to help, not knowing Kehoe had set a timer for the school bomb too. 15 minutes after the school day started, the school's north wing exploded, trapping and killing many children. Kehoe then drove his truck, loaded with even more explosives, to the school. He set off another bomb in the truck, killing himself and several others nearby. The community was in shock. Doctors and firefighters helped the injured, and everyone tried to save the children. A second bomb was found at the school, but did not explode. In total, 45 people died because of Kehoe's actions. Another 58 were hurt. This was America's first school bombing, and it showed how much damage one angry person could do when he believed the world was against him. The Dresden bombing aftermath, 1945. 75 years ago, during World War II, the city of Dresden in Germany was bombed by Allied forces. This happened on the night of February 13, 1945. In just 15 minutes, hundreds of bombs were dropped on the city. Over the next 2 days, more bombs followed. These attacks caused a huge fire that spread quickly and destroyed much of the city. About 25,000 people died, many from the fire or smoke. Ernst Hirsch was a 9-year-old boy living in Dresden at the time. When the bombs started falling, he and his parents hid in their basement. After the first attack, they ran outside and saw everything around them burning. Their home was badly damaged, but they were lucky to survive. Many families were not so lucky. Later in life, Ernst became a cameraman. He filmed the rebuilding of Dresden and saved old pictures and videos of the city. He wanted people to remember what happened and learn from it. He called the rebuilt Frauenkirche, a famous church, a miracle. He had been baptized there before the war and never thought it would be standing again. Lionel the Lion-Faced Boy, 1907. Stefan Bobrowski, known as the Lion-Faced Boy, was born in 1890 in Poland. He had a rare condition called hypertrichosis, which made his whole body covered in long, silky hair. This condition is very rare and is sometimes called werewolf syndrome. When he was 5 years old, a German showman named Herr Sedlmayr found him. With his parents' permission, Sedlmayr took Stefan to Germany. He wanted to be a dentist, but he only had a few teeth because of his condition. Even though he was short, only 5'3", he was quick and loved to do tricks. As he grew older, his hair reached 8 inches on his face and 4 inches on the rest of his body. People said he looked like a lion, so he was called Lionel the Lion-Faced Boy. His stage story said his mother saw his father attacked by a lion while she was pregnant, which made him look like a lion. This was not true, but it made the story more exciting. Lionel became very popular and performed in Europe and the United States. He could speak 5 languages and was very kind to people who came to see him. He was paid a lot of money for his shows. Later he joined the famous Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus in the United States. He learned acrobatics and became very skilled. He was always well-dressed and liked to tell stories about his travels. In 1907, he returned to Berlin and performed in a wax museum. In 1913, he moved to New York City to work at Coney Island's Dreamland Circus, where he stayed for 15 years. One day, a hotel where he was staying caught fire, but he escaped safely. He said he was scared that if he lost his hair, he would be just an ordinary man. In 1928, he returned to Germany to retire. Sadly, he died of a heart attack in 1932 at the age of 41. He never married or had children, but he left behind a story that people still remember today. Katharina Detzel and her straw man, 1910. Katharina Detzel with a male dummy of her own creation from the Prinzhorn collection. Insane women had no place in the normal society. They went to mental institutions where they had no voice at all. There were almost twice as much women diagnosed for insanity as men. In the early 1910s, women were not taken serious in their artwork. They only had the opportunity to put their creativity in the typical female handcraft. The institutions gave the insane women the special opportunity to make artwork as well, but the staff didn't attend to save and register the made artwork like they did with their male patients. Katharina was put in a mental institution in 1907 after supposedly sabotaging a railway line as a political protest. Before the Nazis murdered her in 1941, she wrote a play, tried to establish a home for babies, protested against the way the inmates were treated, and created miniature figures out of bread dough she probably chewed herself. Katharina also made a life-sized male doll out of the mattress ticking in straw from her bed, which she'd pummel when she was angry or dance with when she felt happy. This male gave her the surrogate love she needed in the institute. Radium Girls, 1920s. On April 20th, 1902, Marie and Pierre Curie found a new element called radium. At first, people thought radium was good for health, so it was used in many products like makeup, ceramics, and even food. But people didn't know then that radium was very dangerous. Radiation was thought to be helpful because it could kill cancer cells. Radium glowed in the dark, which made people think it had magic powers. Doctors said radium was good for you, so it was added to many things like toothpaste, makeup, and even chocolate. Some people even bathed in radium water at spas. During World War I, radium paint was used to make watch dials and other tools glow at night. Many women got jobs painting these dials because the work paid well and seemed safe. They used tiny brushes and were told to lick the tips to make them sharp. No one knew how dangerous this was. Years later, the women started to get sick. Their teeth hurt, their jaws fell apart, and they felt tired and weak. Many went to the doctor, but didn't get help. Some were told they had other diseases like syphilis, even though it wasn't true. One worker, Grace Fryer, had to wear a metal brace because her spine was so weak. She and 4 other women tried to sue their old company, but at first no lawyer would help them. By 1928, the women finally took the company to court. Newspapers wrote about them, and people realized how dangerous radium was. The company tried to avoid paying them, but in the end, the women won a little money to help with their medical bills. Because of the Radium Girls, scientists learned how bad radiation can be. Their fight was the first time a company was forced to care for the health of its workers. Their bravery saved many lives and helped make workplaces safer for everyone. The Hinterkaifeck Murders farm, 1922. In 1922, a small farm in rural Germany called Hinterkaifeck became the scene of a shocking murder. 6 people from the same family were killed, and the killer was never found. The farm belonged to Andreas and Cecilia Gruber, their daughter Victoria, her children Cecilia and Joseph, and their maid Maria. Strange things happened in the days before the murders. Footprints in the snow led to the farm, but not away, and a strange magazine appeared on their land. The maid said she heard noises in the attic and was so scared she quit her job. Maria, a new maid, started working there on March 31, 1922. On April 1st, people noticed the family was missing. A repairman named Albert Hoffner came to fix a machine at the farm. He didn't see anyone and waited for hours. Later, a neighbor named Lorenz Schlittenbauer became worried. He and 2 other men went to the farm and found the barn door unlocked. Inside, they found 4 family members dead under hay. In the house, they found young Joseph in his crib and Maria in her room, also dead. Police came and found that the killer had used a farm tool to kill the family, hitting them hard on the head. It looked like the killer stayed at the farm for a while after the murders. They even fed the animals and covered the bodies. Some people thought Lorenz was suspicious because he had a key to the house and found the bodies first. There were many theories, but no one really knows who did it. The murders remain a mystery to this day, and the killer was never caught. The Lipstick Killer's Message, 1945. In 1945, police in Chicago found a dead woman in her apartment. A knife was stuck in her neck, and on the wall was a message written in lipstick. "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." This was not the first time. Months earlier, another woman, Josephine Ross, had been killed in her home. The killer had cleaned her body in the bathtub and even bandaged her wounds, as if feeling sorry. Then came Frances Brown. She was found with a knife in her neck and gunshot wounds. Again, the killer cleaned her and tried to cover the wounds. He had even climbed into her apartment through a tiny window ledge. In January 1946, a 6-year-old girl named Suzanne Degnan was taken from her home. Her body was later found in pieces, cleaned and hidden in sewers. A note asking for ransom had spelling mistakes and strange capital letters. More attacks happened, women shot or tied up but not killed. The attackers sometimes helped the victims afterward or simply fled. He seemed clever and athletic, almost like someone with 2 sides, one violent, one caring. In June 1947, a young man tried to rob another building. When police caught him, he fought hard. It took several officers and even smashing flower pots over his head to stop him. His name was William Herons, a 17-year-old student at the University of Chicago. He was smart, popular, and even handsome. But he had a long history of stealing, keeping everything he took. Police found lots of stolen goods in his room, including expensive war bonds. They also found evidence linking him to the murders. His fingerprints matched. Some of his spelling mistakes matched the ransom note. Police said he confessed but later changed his story. He claimed he was tortured and denied a lawyer. Still, he was given life in prison. To this day, some people believe he was innocent. William always said, "I didn't kill her." The real killer is still out there. The Black Dahlia, 1947. On January 15, 1947, in Los Angeles, a woman walking with her child saw something strange in a field. It looked like a broken mannequin, but when police came, they saw it was the body of a young woman. The body was cut in half, cleaned, and had no blood. Police believed the killer had medical knowledge. Soon, they found out the woman was 22-year-old Elizabeth Short from Massachusetts. She had moved to Los Angeles to become famous. People called her Beth. She was beautiful, but her life was full of mystery. She didn't have a steady home and stayed with different friends. On January 9th, 6 days before she was found, Beth got a ride to Los Angeles from a man named Red Manley. He said she was acting nervous. He dropped her off at the Biltmore Hotel. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. Police started a big search for her killer. They talked to many people, including her friend Ann Toth. Ann told them about Mark Hansen, a rich man who ran a nightclub. He let young women like Beth stay at his house. Ann said Mark was very interested in Beth and didn't like her seeing other men. Beth tried to avoid upsetting Mark, so she told him she was a virgin. This only made him want her more. Things got worse when Beth saw Mark bring another woman home. They had a fight, and he made her leave his house. On the night before Beth's murder, she called Ann and said Mark was acting strange. She said she might visit, but never came. After Beth's body was found, someone mailed her purse and things to a newspaper. Her address book had Mark Hansen's name on it. This made police look at Mark again, but he had an alibi. He was at a movie and had witnesses. Police never searched his home or car. The case went cold. To this day, no one knows who killed Elizabeth Short. Her murder, now called the Black Dahlia case, remains one of the most famous unsolved crimes in America. 4 Children for Sale, 1948. This is a sad story about a real photo taken in 1948. The picture shows a mother, Lucille Chalafou, with her head down, behind her 4 children. In front of them is a sign that says, 4 Children for Sale. The photo was first printed in a newspaper in Indiana on August 5, 1948. Many people saw it soon after. Some people thought the photo might be fake, but the story is true. The mother was very poor and could not take care of her kids. She was also pregnant with another baby at the time. Sadly, all of the children in the photo, and even the baby she was carrying, were sold to other people. One of the daughters later said she was sold for just $2. Some of the children were treated very badly. One said they were chained up in a barn and forced to work on a farm like slaves. Dyatlov Pass Incident. In 1959, 9 hikers went on a trip to a cold, snowy mountain area in the Soviet Union. They were all experienced and knew how to survive in the wild. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov. One hiker, Yuri Yudin, got sick and had to leave early. The other 9 kept going. They traveled through snow and cold weather and made notes and pictures along the way. On February 1st, they reached a mountain called Dead Mountain. They set up their tent near the top. Days passed, but they did not come back or send any news. People got worried and sent a search team. On February 26th, the team found the hikers' tent. It was strange. The tent was cut open from the inside, but everything else was still inside. It looked like the hikers left quickly, but calmly. The search team followed footprints from the tent into the forest. After some walking, they found 2 bodies by a campfire. Over the next 2 months, they found all 9 bodies in different places. Some of the hikers were badly dressed for the cold, only wearing light clothes in freezing weather. Some had broken bones like from a big fall, and some had injuries like crushed ribs and a fractured skull. Some had missing eyes or tongues, but doctors said this was from the body breaking down after death, not from violence. A few had burn marks and some clothes were found to be slightly radioactive. The police investigation said only that they died from an unknown powerful force, but this gave no real answers. One good theory is that a fire or smoke from their stove inside the tent scared them so much that they cut the tent open and ran outside in panic. Outside, it was very cold and dark. They tried to make a fire in the woods, but some got hurt in a small avalanche and died from their injuries or the cold. The strange things like missing tongues or radioactivity probably have normal explanations, like the body decaying or their work with nuclear materials before the trip. No one knows exactly what scared the hikers so much that night, but it was likely something natural like smoke or an avalanche, not anything mysterious. James Brock pouring acid into a pool, 1964. In 1964, at a motel in St. Augustine, Florida, a group of black and white people were protesting. They wanted to eat at a restaurant inside the motel, but the owner would not let black people enter. Among the protesters was Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and his friends. The protest was about unfair treatment and racism. The people wanted to be treated equally and to use the restaurant like everyone else. But the motel manager, a white man, did something very bad. He poured acid into the motel's swimming pool where the protesters were standing and sitting. This was dangerous and hurtful. Police officers were there, but they did not stop the manager. After the protest, many of the protesters, including Martin Luther King Jr., were taken to jail. Not long after this event, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 into law. This law made it illegal to treat people differently because of their skin color. The story shows how hard it was for black people to fight for equal rights. They were not allowed to go into some places just because of their skin color. Some white people helped the black protesters and joined them in the pool. Those white helpers were called white allies. The protest was about more than just using a swimming pool or eating at a restaurant. It was about respect and fairness. But even with the law, the struggle for equality continued. The Beaumont Children, 1966. On January 26, 1966, Australia Day, a hot summer day, most people were happy, drinking, swimming, and having fun. But for one family in Adelaide, this day became very sad and scary. The Beaumont family's 3 children, Jane 9 years old, Anna 7, and Grant 5, went missing and never came back. The parents, Jim and Nancy Beaumont, lived in a small house near Glenelg Beach. The day before the kids disappeared, Jim took them to the beach. He left them there, trusting Jane to look after her younger siblings. That evening, all 3 children came home safely. So the parents thought it was okay for the kids to go back to the beach the next day by themselves. On the morning of January 26, the kids left for the beach on a bus at 8:45 a.m., planning to return on the 12 p.m. bus. But when the bus came back, the children were not on it. Their mother, Nancy, waited for the 2 p.m. bus, hoping they had missed the earlier one. But still, the kids never arrived. Jim came home early from work when he heard the children were missing. At 3 p.m., Jim and Nancy went to look for them at the beach, but found nothing. They checked with friends and family, but nobody had seen the children. Finally, at 5:30 p.m., they called the police. The whole country soon knew about the missing kids. Police checked everywhere, but after days, there was no sign of them or their things. The children had taken many items with them, but none were found. People who worked near the beach saw the children with a tall man, about 30 to 35 years old. He had brown hair and was wearing swimming clothes. The kids looked happy with him, but this was strange because the Beaumont children were shy and wouldn't normally talk to strangers. The police made sketches of this man, hoping someone would recognize him. Many questions remained, and the family and country waited, hoping to find the children. The mystery has never been solved, even after many years and many suspects. Blanche Monnier's discovery, 1901. Blanche Monnier was a young woman from France in the late 1800s. She was very beautiful and kind. She fell in love with an older lawyer, but her mother did not like him at all. Blanche's mother was very strict and wanted her to marry someone rich and powerful. Because of this, she locked Blanche away in a small dark room in their house. For 25 years, Blanche lived in that room. The room was very dirty and there was no light. Blanche had only a small bed and some food that her mother and brother gave her. They told everyone that Blanche had disappeared. No one knew where she was. People in the town thought Blanche had run away. Her friends missed her, but they believed she was gone forever. Her mother and brother kept the secret for many years. They told no one that Blanche was in the house all along. One day someone sent a letter to the police. The letter said that a woman was locked away in a hidden room. The police went to Blanche's house to see if it was true. When they found the room, they were shocked. Blanche was very thin and dirty. She had not seen the sun or felt fresh air in 25 years. The police took Blanche out of the room. She was very weak, but she was happy to be free. Her mother was arrested and died of heart attack a few months later. Blanche's brother was also punished, but not severely at all. Blanche went to live in a hospital to recover. She spent the rest of her life there, safe and cared for. Soviet famine of 1932. After the Russian Revolution and Civil War, Russia was in chaos. A terrible famine broke out between 1920 and 1921. It killed up to 10 million people. Many died from hunger or from diseases that spread among the starving people. The war had already killed millions of soldiers and left the country in ruins. Farms were in bad shape because there were not enough workers and because of droughts. Crops were poor, and trains could not deliver food where it was needed. The Communist Red Army took food from farmers without paying them. Farmers were forced to give up so much food that they had nothing left to feed their own families. People were so hungry that they began eating anything they could find. They ate tree bark, weeds, dead animals, and even straw from the roofs of their homes. Many children looked like skeletons because they were so thin. Disease spread quickly among the starving people. In some places, people turned to cannibalism. They dug up dead bodies to eat, or even killed family members so others could survive. There were stories of butcher shops selling human meat. Some of these stories may have been exaggerated, but many were true. Cannibals were often killed or jailed if caught. As the famine spread, people left their villages hoping to find food in the cities. Many died on the journey. Some parents abandoned their children because they could not feed them. Orphanages were overcrowded and full of disease. At first, the communist leaders did not want foreign help, but soon they realized they needed it. Groups like the American Relief Administration and British Save the Children worked hard to help. They opened kitchens that fed millions of people, especially children. Relief workers also gave out medicine to stop diseases. By 1923, better harvests and foreign aid helped end the famine in most places. However, in some places, hunger lasted until 1925. The Russian famine was one of the deadliest famines in history. Comfort women in World War II. During the Second World War, many terrible things were done to innocent people. One of the worst things was the way the Japanese army treated women in the lands they took over. The Japanese army made places called comfort stations. These were brothels where soldiers could go. The army said these places would stop soldiers from hurting local people and stop diseases. But in truth, it was a way to force women into terrible lives. Many women were taken by force. Some were told they would work in factories or as nurses, but they ended up in these brothels. Most women were kidnapped or lied to. Women from many countries like Korea, China, Indonesia, and the Philippines were forced to work in these places. Some were teenagers or even younger. In many places, soldiers took women from their homes and made them live with the army. Many women never saw their families again. The women lived in bad conditions. They were often beaten and had to serve many soldiers every day. Many of them became sick and many died. In some places, the Japanese soldiers even killed the women when they ran away or when the army lost battles. A woman from Korea named Kim Hal-sun told her story. She said she was taken when she was 17. She was told she would work in a factory, but she was taken to a brothel instead. She was assaulted many times every day and felt sick around all men after that. She said she did not feel like a woman anymore. Many women were never able to tell their stories. Some were killed in the war, and some took their own lives because they could not live with what happened to them. Many women were left with deep pain and shame for the rest of their lives. Tereska draws home, 1948. This is a photo of a girl named Tereska. She was 7 years old when the photo was taken. Tereska was from Poland and had lived through a very hard time, World War II. She had been in a concentration camp during the war. The photo was taken in a school in Warsaw 3 years after the war ended. In this photo, Tereska is doing an art activity called This is Home. The children were asked to draw what home meant to them. But instead of a house or family, Tereska drew wild, messy lines all over the chalkboard. Some people think her drawing shows how confused and hurt her mind was after all she had seen. Her eyes in the photo look sad and scared. There are 2 photos of her taken just moments apart. In both pictures, her face looks the same, serious and full of pain. Her drawing becomes even more wild in the second photo. Tereska went to a school for children with mental and emotional problems. Some teachers said she liked to talk and tried her best in class. But as she grew up, things got harder. She started drinking and smoking, and she hurt her younger brother. In 1978, Tereska died after choking on food she took from another patient in a mental hospital. She was only in her 40s. People say the war never really ended for her.